And welcome to another evening of frank conversation here on Hard Copy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. Last week, we had a conversation on holding politicians to account and ensuring that we have violence-free elections. This week, following the update of the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, the CBN's plan to redesign the Naira, which many have linked to curbing vote trading in upcoming elections, and the expectations of the electorate. What are some of the pressing challenges before INEC? Is it addressing them in a satisfactory manner? If it isn't, what more can it do? Idayat Hassan is a director of the Center for Democracy and Development and a member of the National Peace Committee. Idayat, a pleasure to have you on Hard Copy.
Oh, thank you, Marwe.
Let's quickly have this. This week we saw at least 2 engagements by the INEC chairman. He visited trainers who are supposed to be training other people to use BVAS, and he also had his quarterly briefing with political parties. And I think all of these moves, all of these engagements are to boost confidence amongst these classes of people and also the general public. At least that's why the media is allowed to see them. Do you think it's having a desired effect?
I think it's actually been a positive, this consistent engagement with not just the political actors, civil society, the security forces, the media and all stakeholders. What Consultative Forum does is that it gives an opportunity for the Commission to inform people of what their plans are and possibly what the challenges are. So this helps to clear misinformation, but it's also a negotiating platform.
Okay.
So if you look at the political parties, for instance, you will find that they were able to get INEC to shift their ground and extend the time for primaries to hold between May and June this year, really. So that was, of course, well utilized. And I think we need to talk more and more and more really as the elections come by. Instead of having this quarterly meeting, there will be a need to actually start having like monthly meetings. But what is very important for the Commission to do is to ensure that it is not responding to challenges, but is actually proactively communicating with Nigerians.
That's predicting the challenges and, you know, and also maybe acting upon them. It still doesn't remove the controversy that, you know, we usually see. So let me give you an instance. I was watching my colleague a few nights ago talking about, you know, how rumors will start. And then before you know what's happening, rumor eventually becomes fact. There have been attempts, or there's a rumor that the INEC chairman, some politicians are trying to see how they can remove the INEC chairman and stop the use of BVAS, etc. For civil society organizations such as yourself, do you monitor such information? Do you take them seriously?
I think there is no impossibility in Nigeria. And this will not be the first elections where we would be hearing such a thing. You remember that in the prelude to the 2015 elections, we had this whole talk about Jega must proceed on terminal leave because he has just a 3-month terminal leave, making him not to be the one that will conduct the elections. So there is no impossibility, because for Nigeria, politics is a zero-sum game. So we can't just jettison it. It might be true, it might not be true, but we must also take cognizance that the information ecosystem is very polluted. So sifting or sorting fact from fiction at times becomes very impossible. But our lived reality means we cannot preclude it. But will that be good when we talk in terms of electoral integrity, when we talk in terms of boosting confidence of citizens in the whole electoral process? I think that will be an anomaly. Just the same way that it will be an anomaly for INEC to walk back on utilizing the BVAS, which many have come to associate with credible elections. Now, you are not even just talking about the fingerprints, but also the facials. So if the fingers should fail, will your facials also fail? So that will actually reduce all these ghost voting, ballot box stuffing if properly deployed in the elections.
They have been described as the game changer, the introduction of BVAS and also the electronic transmission of results. And we saw how hard a lot of CSOs and also, not just civil society, but even Nigerians in general pushed for that amendment to be able to sail through in the Electoral Act amendment process that went on. But do you have any reservations with the deployment for the upcoming polls? Are you confident that INEC will be able to successfully deploy this? We've seen them tested in off-season elections, but a lot of people will say, oh, these are for small state-based elections. On a more general basis, what challenges do you see with the deployment of the BVAS?
I think the BVAS, good as it may be, if it's not properly deployed, it can become a source of tension during the elections in itself. And we have also seen other countries who have attempted to deploy something hacking or similar to the BVAS. Kenya is an example with the KIMS kit, which they deployed first in 2013, 2018, and the 2022 elections. There were incremental successes in its deployment. So it's not a silver bullet. It will only be a silver bullet if the people that will actually be utilizing these devices are well trained ahead of this election. So training is very, very important. Now, beyond the training that must also happen, how many spares will INEC also be providing, assuming one BVAS does not work? Or how many rack techs, all those technicians, will be available across the country, the 774 local governments, to have it immediately addressed? So training, having enough spare BVAS to go around during the elections in case of malfunction, and enough people to actually try and test this malfunction will be important. Without adequate training and some of these issues earlier highlighted, it might be very, very problematic. But we are very positive, because when you look at the introduction of the smart card reader, which the BVAS has actually built upon, that was when we stopped seeing all this large voter turnout in elections. And this time around, because with the BVAS, there will again not be the use of incident form. So we have been able to cure the deficits with in the use of the smart card reader, where when people discovered that they could not break it, they used incidents form as a way of circumventing the whole process. So it is a positive in itself. And I think one thing we don't talk often enough is that it's also a system that doesn't necessarily, when it is working for voter accreditation, needs the internet.
I am just wondering, you said a few things about, INEC, whether it will have spares, and how many spares it will have, how many technicians it will have, assuming these things were to malfunction. Do you think that the organization need to address that with the Nigerian public? Should it be how transparent do you think it can go without constituting a security risk to itself?
No, I think it's transparent. In previous elections, they always have space. It's just like the smart card reader. You don't go to the, elections without extra smart card readers. You have to have, and now they have those rack technicians who are always going around moving when they say that there are problems in this environment. They go there and they actually sort out these problems. But because this is a general elections, it will mean that we will need more. Because of the inflationary trend, it is also going to cost a lot of money. So all these are stages and they are continuum, but they have to build citizens' confidence in this whole electoral process, because INEC is not just conducting elections on its own. It's conducting elections in a country that is so divided itself. So its prevailing circumstances also means that its response will have to be above par, average, at every point in time.
It's a very tough one. I'm looking at, but it's not an impossible one. It's not an impossible one. I'm looking at, one of the things that you said earlier when I was talking about how rumors eventually become fact. And I know that one of the things that CDD has done continues to, I was tempted to call you Madam Makamata. But one of the things it's done is, help to fight disinformation. How big a war do you think that is in this coming elections?
I think this is one of the, elections is, I call it a TikTok elections, actually, that we have even moved from all those other platforms, social media platforms, to TikTok, then cross-platforming for these elections. This is an information warfare we are fighting. These days, when you look at political actors, they no longer even focus on all the nitty-gritties. They first start with their strategic communication unit, or what they call spokesperson, the communication team, and all this. And a lot of money is actually being invested in this. And we have seen it. We have seen it in previous elections, even in 2019 elections, in off-cycle elections, and in these forthcoming elections.
So what's the work of the strategic team? Is it to pass out misinformation?
It's a part of it. One is, of course, to woo voters. But again, they are instrumentalizing or weaponizing disinformation a lot. And they are weaponizing it in different ways. One is that they use it to glorify their candidate while they delegitimize their candidate. At times, people will even bring fake pictures of mosques, of churches, and claim that their candidates actually built it when it is not true. They delegitimize others by bringing up fake news against them. Beyond that, they also use it to confuse voters. And they use it, importantly, to delegitimize institutions. And that we will continue to see as the elections move closer. And INEC has been a recipient of this in previous elections. In fact, if you look at what they do in off-cycle elections, we call it like a triangle. At the beginning of an electoral process, you will find that the fighting is always within the party. Then when they fight and they finally have their primaries, they will move to court. After they move to court and everything has been settled, either they win or they are still in court, the third angle will then be INEC. And there you will be getting a lot of fake news, delegitimizing the institution, causing confusion during voting also. We will be here and they will tell us that, they are fighting in one place. And it is even used to suppress voters. I think we've seen that in several elections, either Kogi, 2019, where they even passed around information and leaflets telling people if they would not vote certain ways, they shouldn't come out to vote. In the Kano supplementary elections, governorship elections itself, we found the same, where pictures, in fact, out of like 24 pictures we examined, it was only 3 of those pictures that were valid, because majority of these pictures... 24? Yes. Majority of these pictures, which they were instrumentalizing to suppress voters in opposition stronghold, were not true. In fact, at times during elections, they will go and bring pictures of people carrying arms. They will go and take those pictures and put it that this is opposition carrying arms while they are on campaign trail, but they will not show the same where they too themselves, they have arms.
I'm wondering, what are the choices then for voters? When you look at how confusing all of this can be and maybe overwhelming, what choices really are before voters? They are taking
disinformation and weaponization of data alongside is taking away the choices from voters. In fact, I'm fond of saying it these days that it's more like or less like rigging the minds of the people before the voting process itself. So, and this has become the reality of elections, not just in Nigeria, but worldwide itself. And that is why when you hear in the United States, they are talking about election interference. They aren't necessarily talking about ballot box stuffing. They are talking really about how the processes, how disinformation has been weaponized to change the whole electoral contest. And that was what we saw with the 2016 U.S. elections, the 2020, again, U.S. elections like that. And the world is increasingly a global village where even the work the diaspora community contributes in this instance is not actually small at all. Like in the 2019 elections, when we looked at our data of over 33 million tweets, what we discovered was that 46% of those tweets were coming from out of Nigeria, not even within Nigeria. And I'm sure that in these forthcoming elections, it will actually be much more.
Let me take you up on this talk about elections being multi-sectoral multi-stakeholder affairs. Do you think that other agencies, which also have a great role to play, such as security agencies, are they also being as well prepped, or are they getting as much attention as they ought to get? Or are we focusing, let's say, all of the attention on INEC?
Yeah, I think that as a country, we've often focused so much attention on INEC, not to the detriment of other agencies, really, or in these elections. Elections is a multi-stakeholders affair because INEC is just conducting, but it needs the support. So if you look at securing the poll, it is actually the work of the security agencies. When you look at voter education, it's not really, yes, it's part of the mandate of INEC, but it is the work of political parties actually to tell people why they should vote for them, what they should vote for, what the processes are, and to ensure they turn up at the polling units, not just INEC and civil society itself. Even the whole logistics chain, it's also there. The NOA is a very important component of the whole electoral architecture. So it's very, very multi-stakeholder. And of course, the citizens themselves. But our own emphasis most time is just been on these people conducting the elections. What about the environment within which they will have to conduct the elections? If political actors make it very, very toxic, where do you start talking about the integrity of the electoral processes? Across the country now, you can see that governors, parties are making rules that is not affording level playing field to their opponents in the state. We have seen states where people have come to say, before you can campaign, you must campaign in a primary school. You have to pay 5 million, you have to give 2 weeks notice. If you are vying for the House of Rep or House of Assembly position, will you actually have such money, really, such money? At the same time, some have even asked for 10 million. Some will stop people from voting.
So these are all moves you think are counterproductive?
They are counterproductive because it is actually taking away the integrity quotient in the elections itself. The environment is not just what happens on election day that matters. Now, the security forces, for instance, the Nigerian police, in the last couple of months, I think since the beginning of the year, have said they are training officers, police officers on elections, security. This is very laudable, but they are not just the only actors. And it's one thing to train, is for us to actually see the actions during the elections. These are important because if, for instance, we are ready, everybody is ready. Civil society is ready to go and monitor the elections. But in particular, INEC is ready with our deployment. If there is no security to accompany them to the polling unit from the rack, it's impossible to actually get there. So at times when you look at the logistical nightmares that we often encountered, you will see that it is occasioned by this chain of actors that are involved. And what it means is that if nobody is actually seeing the young copper off to the polling unit, if he gets to the polling unit late, he will not be able to put the voting cubicle in the right way. The voters are already agitated, and the whole system, the whole process from that can actually take a turn for the worse if care is not taken.
Well, we hope that we see less and less of that, but we're also hoping that, you know, that all the security agencies are preparing as they say that they are. Is anybody keeping an eye on what sort of preparations they're having, what sort of training they're having? Because I know that one of the things that have also come out from previous elections is vote buying. Some people call it vote trading. And oftentimes they blame the security agencies that they're always there, but they do nothing about it. So what do you think that training should incorporate?
I think it's really about action. It's not really, this is not even a training issue. They are law enforcement agencies. And it's not just police. Most times you have prison services, the military, everybody is involved in this. You can turn your face when you find a crime actually being committed. And more, the AFCC and the ICPC have already become involved in this whole process. I'm sure that in the last couple of days, we have heard in the news that they are prosecuting people, I think from court during the Osun elections on vote trading. In Gombe, in 2019, we saw one person prosecuted also and sentenced with an option of fine. We need to see more of this. And when it comes to vote trading, vote trading will not just be addressed at the polling unit. It has to be addressed before we get to the polling unit. How is this all suspicious financial transactions should be flagged? Those are responsibility of the NFIU.
One of the things that we've also seen, and it happened this week as well, is this news out of the blues from the Central Bank of Nigeria that it was going to be redesigning some denominations of the Naira. Some people have tied it to the elections. They say this is also something to rein in politicians and also perhaps curb vote trading. I do not know. But from where you sit, I understand that some civil society organizations have kicked against it, that it's too close to the elections. And, considering where we are in the economy, this might not exactly be the best decision. I do not know whether your organization has taken a look at this, but from where you sit, do you think that this has any potential on the elections?
I think that this goes beyond the elections. It's the potential on the economy we should actually look at, because we will need an economy when elections is over. In fact, the way the economy is handled at this point will the kind of policies that are being made is what will instill investors' confidence in the whole process. With each elections, investors are very edgy. It's either they stop investing and divest of their interest, or they just take a watch, or we will call it sit-down look attitude until the elections have held. We have to start thinking in terms of policies that will not inspire fear, that will eventually affect the economy of the country. Then when you look at this in the first instance, these actors, are they really denominating their money in Naira? Or they are denominating in dollars?
Yeah, but when they vote trade, what do they use? What do they spend?
It is so even, they spend in Naira then, but don't even forget that we have seen instances. In fact, one of our work, which looks at the use of data in Nigerian elections post-2019, showed that people even sent alerts. They were not giving physical cash. They were instead paying money directly into the accounts of people to circumvent the process of moving money around and even being caught up by the law enforcement agencies. So it will not, what it will do is maybe it might be able to bring back some money which some people possibly had buried. But what our emphasis or focus should really be is what is the big picture of it. You can't take one strategic direction without thinking of how it will affect other directions and how that come together as a whole. But be that as it may, I'm not an economist. Yes.
Fair enough. But you're certainly a member of the Peace Committee, headed by General Abdulsalami. And I'm wondering, I did speak with a member of the Peace Committee, the head of the Secretariat last week, and he had his own personal affairs. He said it wasn't about the Peace Committee. This was not a position of the Peace Committee, but he thinks that the candidates being from different parts of the country is a security risk from what he sees. Is it an assessment you also share? As
an analyst who understands the country and who have seen the division that is currently going on in the country, and when you look at also the history of political contest, how people have voted in previous elections, with the 3 leading candidates, or let's say the 4 leading candidates, being from different parts of the country, when we finish, we are going to have an ethnic votes map.
You also see that?
That's what we've written about it. Like if you had read our analysis at the CDD, we've written about this since the beginning of August. And we will write more about it.
Not even the demography. The demography that is, pursuing leading one of the candidates now, saying, look, we are not of that generation that votes along ethnic lines. You don't think that that's going to make any difference whatsoever?
The demography is very good, and demography will actually benefit a candidate, especially the more they turn up. And when you look at the new registration, but don't forget, turnout in different parts of the country differs. While it might benefit, it may not likely shift the vote. There will be some differing. But this is not also something that is out of place, because if you look at the history of contest since 1999, we have some states that have not shifted, and they have consistently voted the same way. And when you trace that to the 1979 and the 1983 elections, it also bears evidence, scientifically, that you can adduce to this. So we expect to see a lot of that in these elections. And this has implication. That is where the Peace Committee will come in. Like whosoever emerges winner in the forthcoming elections will have to be magnanimous in victory. It is not an elections where people will start dancing and celebrating and saying that, oh, this is winner take all. Because with such a thing, it will raise tension because the country is already so divided and combustible at this point in time.
Well, I hope that our leaders will have that as at the back of their mind and will also give it food for thought. We have to thank you for coming on Hard Copy, Idayat Hassan.
Thank you very much, Marpe, for having me.
Well, this conversation is about you as much as it is about me. So let's have a conversation. Reach out using the handles showing on your screen. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. Good night.